God gives us powerful evidence of himself through our sense of morality. In fact, it's so powerful that many attempts have been made to explain morality without God. Problem is that the question, how can I explain my moral sense, is not really one question, it's two. It can mean, how can I explain why I have the moral feelings that I have? Or it can mean, how can I explain why I should obey my moral sense? And the problem is that some attempts to explain morality without God answer the first question in a way that makes it impossible to answer the second. For instance, one recent approach to explaining morality comes from evolution. This view assumes that everything about humans must somehow be tailored to further the success of the DNA that codes for human bodies and brains. According to this view, morality is a byproduct of human development in tribal groups over extended time. This view postulates that moral feelings, like our human urge to sacrifice for the good of others, comes from, among other things, the fact that in tribal conditions, humans would almost exclusively interact with those who share a lot of their DNA. So, it might often be a good trade-off to share resources or even sacrifice the life of one DNA-carrying human to save some others. If that were true often enough, then DNA that builds bodies somewhat inclined to sacrifice for other humans might outcompete types of DNA that programs more selfish types of human bodies. People who hold this view have said that if this is right, then long after humans have left the tribal condition, this tendency toward unselfish behavior will continue. So now, when we hear stories of humans on the other side of the world who are suffering, we still have an urge to help them. We no longer share enough DNA with them that this provides any selective advantage to our DNA for us to feel these feelings, but we still feel them. Richard Dawkins has written more than once that these urges to share and sacrifice for others are, from the DNA's perspective, quote, a mistake. Michael Ruse and Edward O. Wilson once claimed that our belief in morality is merely an adaptation put in place to further our reproductive ends. And a bit later, that our ethical sense is, quote, an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes to get us to cooperate, close quote. Now, whatever we think of this theory, we can see how it runs into the problem mentioned earlier. If this approach works at all, it only answers our first question. How can I explain why I have the moral feelings I have? Worse, the answer it gives makes it impossible to answer the second question. How can I explain why I should obey my moral sense? If our ethical sense is an illusion generated in us to serve the needs of DNA from thousands of years ago, needs which don't even exist in modern times, then there can't be a good reason to obey it. Once I know something is an illusion, I can't really take it seriously anymore. These attempts to explain morality without God don't work for us because they ignore the question we really care about. We may be curious about where our moral feelings come from, but we really want to know, and we need to know, why we should obey these feelings. As we've previously discussed, our moral sense feels very much like the voice of God in us. And here's a sweet benefit of that view. Once we recognize God's voice in our moral sense, we get a great answer to the first question, why we have these feelings. But much more importantly, we get an answer to the second question, why it's crucial for all of us to listen to that voice.